All right, welcome back. Hope you're having a great week. Today we're continuing our RBT exam review. We're going through the next set of questions together and breaking them down. If you're new to the channel, welcome. If you're returning, welcome back. Please like and subscribe. If you're looking for our proven state of materials, please check out btexamreview.com. As always, questions, comments, please let us know. Work hard, study hard. Let's get to our questions. Your client receives speech therapy every Tuesday during your RBT session. You notice that the speech therapist often ignores the client completely or takes text and calls during sessions. What should you do as the RBT? As an RBT, your primary role is implementation. So you are sometimes put in situations that could be uncomfortable. We have to collaborate, we have to work as a team, and we have to respect other therapists and teachers and whoever else is in that team working with the client. In this case, you're an RBT working with a speech therapist who is engaging in things that you believe are not appropriate. They're ignoring the client, they're taking texting calls. It's things you wouldn't do. Now, the question becomes, as the RBT, what do you do? How do you respond? What is your place in this ecosystem? A, speak up and ask the speech therapist to pay attention to the client. Now, remember, the RBT is there to implement, and in this case, you're just an observer, right? It's not your role to tell the speech therapist or address it directly with that speech therapist. B, immediately let the client's parents know in the middle of the session. Before you let the client's parents know, what do you need to do? Who do we need to consult first as the RBT, who is always our first contact when something like this occurs? C, report it to your supervisor and ask what to do next. Yes, when in doubt, communicate with your supervisor. It's always your go-to strategy. When you see this happening, you could easily excuse yourself, give them a call, text them, and immediately let them know what's going on. That way they can guide you and tell you what you need to do next. And then D, say nothing. It is not your place to question other team members. RBTs are part of the team. You're an essential part of the team. You have a voice. You should use your voice. However, you need to do it appropriately and ethically. So if you have concerns, the first thing you need to do immediately is go to your supervisor and then ask them, what should I do next? Your supervising BCBA sets different intervals during your time sampling measurements. Some intervals are 3 minutes long, some 5 minutes, some 10 minutes. When using momentary time sampling, when should you record behavior? This is a pretty straightforward measurement question. It's just written in a way that's intended to trick you. And the tricky part is that all your intervals are different lengths. Typically, when you're looking at interval recording or time sampling, the intervals are going to stay the same. In this case, for whatever reason, the BCBA wrote in intervals of different times. So you have 3 minutes, 5 minutes, and 10 minutes. But what doesn't change is the fact you're using momentary time sampling. So you need to ask yourself, what is momentary time sampling? Momentary time sampling is just observing the behavior at the end of the interval and recording whether it's occurring or not. So the key here is at the end of each interval, you look up and see, is the behavior occurring or is it not? So regardless of how long the interval is, that's when you're going to record that behavior. So A, at the end of 3 minutes. Well, for the 3-minute interval, yes, but not for the 5 or 10-minute interval. B, take the average of the intervals and record at the time. There's no reason to take averages here. We're using momentary time sampling. C, at the end of each interval. Yes, that is the rule with momentary time sampling. Regardless of the length of that interval, you're still going at the end of that interval. And then at the end of 5 minutes, again, yes, for the 5-minute interval, but not for the 3 or 10. So as long as you know what momentary time sampling is, don't be distracted by the different interval lengths. If you're using momentary time sampling, at the end of each interval, you are looking up. So when should you record behavior? C, at the end of each interval. Shaping is least likely to be used when? What is shaping? If you get a term, you need to start defining it in your head. It's going to make you more fluent and more effective on the exam. Shaping is reinforcing approximations of behavior. When are we least likely to use shaping? A, when a client needs to learn a brand new behavior or skill. Obviously, shaping is commonly used to teach new skills. That's kind of what it's for, right? As we get closer and closer to our terminal behavior through approximations, we're going to reinforce each approximation. B, when teaching functional communication. Shaping is great at teaching functional communication, especially in early learners and young children. C, when a client already knows how to do something. Typically, shaping is least used if the client already knows how to do something. If the client already knows how to do something, shaping isn't commonly used. Other procedures might be used. Now, there are different types of shaping that can be implemented when they know how to do something, but the most common forms of shaping procedures are used when teaching actual behaviors, new behaviors specifically. And then when teaching approximations of behavior. Of course, that is the definition. So shaping is least likely to be used when a client already knows how to do something. Now notice the question did not say shaping is never used when, it's least likely to be used when. So we might use it when they know how to do something, but it's least likely to be used when they already know how to do something. Which of the following scenarios most closely describes behavioral contrast? So what is behavioral contrast? Behavioral contrast occurs when you change reinforcement in one environment and the behavior increases or decreases, and then another environment, that behavior increases or decreases the other way. So the behaviors are contrasting based on environment. The question is asking you what closely describes that phenomenon. So you're going to identify the situation or the example that describes the phenomenon of behavior contrast. So a behavior that was previously extinct suddenly reappears 3 months later. When a behavior comes back that was extinct 3 months ago, what is that called? It's called spontaneous recovery, right? That behavior is suddenly back again. We need to continue putting it on extinction. B, John engages in self-stimulation, which looks like turning light switches on and off, so his dad removes the light bulb in his room. This is not behavior contrast. We have one environment here, right? Just his room. John's dad is simply putting this behavior on extinction. C, Greg is now receiving candy at home for doing math problems, but the number of problems he completes at school has gone down. So we have two environments. In one environment, the reinforcement schedule changed, and in the other environment, the behavior started to decrease. This is a good example of behavior contrast. C, all three of these represent behavioral contrast. They do not. A is most closely like spontaneous recovery. B is most close to extinction. C is what we're looking for. Greg is getting candy at home for doing math problems, so the number of problems he completes at school goes down. Those behaviors are now contrasting. There is a bucket of toys in the preschool that serves as a reinforcer bucket. If all the items in the bucket were reinforcing, they would make up a what? This is kind of a tricky question, but if you think about it, you shouldn't give you too much trouble. So what do we know? We know we're looking at all the items in the bucket, and we know they're all reinforcing. They're all going to have the same effect on behavior. They're going to increase behavior, however they're using it, right? So all these toys in this bucket have the same properties, and they all have the same effect on behavior. What are they going to make up? A, response class. Are we talking about the responses here? We're not. We're talking about the stimuli, these toys. So they're going to make up a stimulus class. Put very, very simply, a stimulus class is a group of stimuli that have the same effect on behavior. They evoke the same behavior, they punish the same behavior, they reinforce the same behavior. In this case, we have all these items that all have the same effect on the behaviors. They're all reinforcing. So they make up a stimulus class. Antecedent class, well, they're reinforcers, so they're not antecedents, they're going to be consequences. And stimulus is a single stimulus. We're looking at multiple toys, so we're looking at stimuli. So all these items in the bucket are reinforcing. They would make up a stimulus class. A student driver drives around an obstacle course in a parking lot to get the hang of pedals and steering wheel. When the student driver goes on the highway, he is engaging in what? So picture this in your mind, right? You should already be thinking generalization. He's learning, he's learning, he's learning. He's then going to a new environment and trying to do the skill there. He's trying to generalize. The question becomes, what type of generalization? So remember, with response generalization, right, we have a single stimulus, and then we have multiple responses in the presence of that stimulus. With stimulus generalization, we have a single response across multiple stimuli. You have to ask yourself, are we looking at a single response here or a single stimulus? Well, if they're going around the parking lot in their car to get the hang of the pedals and steering wheel, and then they go around the highway using the pedals and steering wheel, the response is the same. What's changed? Well, the environmental stimuli, the setting has changed. Another way to look at stimulus generalization is setting generalization. So we've generalized driving from the parking lot to the highway. So he's not engaging in response generalization. The response stays the same. He's engaging in stimulus generalization. Again, another way to think about stimulus generalization is setting generalization. What is the difference between a contrived contingency and a natural contingency? Real quick fluency check here. When we say contrived, what do we mean? We mean planned. It's in the plan. We are setting it up. We are making it happen. A natural contingency is unplanned. It occurs in the natural environment. We are not doing it. And these are two very important things, right? We contrive contingencies all the time to teach behavior, to punish behavior. Natural contingencies are what help us in the environment. They help maintain, generalize, and punish behavior naturally. So there's a difference. What is that difference? A contrived contingency is stronger than a natural contingency. Well, that's just not at all true. The contingency is the contingency. Whether it's contrived or natural, the contingency is going to determine the strength of that said contingency. B, a contrived contingency is unplanned and a natural contingency is planned. Think about that for a second. Is a natural contingency planned? It is not. C, a natural contingency is unplanned and a contrived contingency is planned. Yes, that's what we're looking for here, right? Is natural contingencies are unplanned contingencies from the environment. A contrived contingency is something we are setting up. And then D, a natural contingency can only be reinforcing. Of course not. Things in the natural environment punish us all the time, right? So the main difference between contrived and natural is a natural contingency is unplanned and a contrived contingency is planned. You're on a conference call in your office when you hear the vacuum cleaner outside your door. You ask your daughter to turn it off for a minute, and she does. This most likely represents what? Typical reinforcement question. We've just added a little twist to really test your knowledge. So this is going to test 3 aspects of knowledge. Do you understand positive and negative? Do you understand reinforcement and punishment? And do you understand the difference between automatic and socially mediated? So let's start with positive and negative. Positive is adding, negative is taking away. In this case, what happens? You hear the vacuum cleaner, you ask your daughter to turn it off, she does. Vacuum cleaner noise has been removed. We've removed it. Is that positive or negative? Of course, it's negative. And we ask ourselves, is this going to be reinforcing to your behavior? Most likely. If in the future you hear the vacuum and you want it turned off, what are you going to do? You're going to ask them to turn it off. So it's going to be reinforcement. And then automatic and socially mediated. So what is the difference between automatic and socially mediated? With automatic, you don't need someone else to deliver reinforcement. Socially mediated involves at least 2 people. You have to remember that. Automatic is basically alone. It's one person reinforcing themselves. Socially mediated involves at least 2 people. So in this case, you have you and the daughter. This is socially mediated. So it's negative, socially mediated reinforcement. Learn to break it down like that. The more you break it down in practice, the quicker you'll be on the exam. But remember, it's not about speed, okay? You can't just make yourself go quicker. Speed comes from fluency. Speed comes from taking your time and really understanding it. Finally, what is wrong with operationally defining a behavior based on only the topography? Operational definitions give us observable, measurable, complete, clear definitions of behavior, right? What is wrong with only including the topography? Now, of course, the topography is how the behavior looks. So what is the issue if we only define behavior by how it looks? A, the topography is always the same for a behavior you're targeting. That's just false, right? So that's not what's going to be wrong. Topography is constantly changing within a behavior. B, the topography does not explain why the behavior is occurring. Yes, that's the problem. The topography describes how our behavior looks. It does not describe the function of why a behavior occurs. C, the topography is useless in an operational definition. Not true. We want to know what it looks like, but we need more information than just that. And then D, there is nothing wrong defining a behavior based on only topography. It's just not going to give you enough information. We're not going to be able to determine why it's occurring. So the problem is the topography alone does not explain why behaviors occur. Okay, thank you for watching. Be sure to check out btexamreview.com. Like, subscribe, questions, comments, let us know. Work hard, study hard. See you soon.